With the world that we live on being 71% water, it comes as no surprise that flooding is the most common natural disaster that we experience as a civilization. In 2020 alone, there was an estimated 6,000 fatalities due to flooding worldwide. If you look at our history, there have been multiple huge floods that have claimed the lives of tens to hundreds of thousands of people. Flash floods have been labeled as the most dangerous type of flood. These generally occur in less than 6 hours, when an area of dry land is pounded by excessive rain and the ground fails to absorb the water, causing a flash flood to occur without any warning, which presents a multitude of dangerous situations. The fast-moving water is far more powerful than many people think it is. On top of that, as it's raging down the street, it's probably decimating things in its path, making it incredibly lethal to get caught in these waters. It only takes roughly 6 inches of rushing water to knock over an adult, along with requiring only 2 feet of moving water to carry away an SUV. Today's victims got caught unexpectedly in one of these situations. One of them survived, and the heartbreaking story is still without closure. Yo, what is good, you darkaholics? Welcome back to the dark side of life, where I will be telling you some very dark stories. So let's just get into it. With the initial mission being built in 1797, lost to a fire a few years later, and then rebuilt by those in that inhabited area in the early 1800s, it was eventually finished and is still there to this day. Standing out as one of California's historical treasures, it attracts many different people to that church, which is open daily. Even though there isn't really much else to do there, people still find beauty in the old town and its structure. The interior of the church remains almost exactly the same as the time it was built, having never been repainted to this day. The quiet town that's around this mission is known as San Miguel, which has always had a small population, and in 2010, they had an estimated 2,336 people residing there. It's found in San Luis Obispo County, which is on the central coast of California. San Miguel is considered to be a very tight-knit community, where everyone is seemingly looking out for each other. Happily living there was the Doan family, parents Lindsy and Brian, along with their 3 children, 18-year-old Tyler, 16-year-old Melanie, and 5-year-old Kyle. Their father was a substitute teacher at a middle school, and their mother was a special education teacher at the Lillian Larson Elementary School, which is also where her youngest son, 5-year-old Kyle, attended class. Kyle himself was just getting through a trying time. After an injury at school, he somehow fractured his femur while he was on the playground, which is the largest bone in your body, requiring 3 surgeries as well as a metal rod being put in there. At the end of 2022, he was finally strong on his feet again, walking, running, and eagerly trying to get back onto the soccer field, which is what he loved to do. He was a brilliant kid who loved to learn new things, finding enjoyment in going to school to learn and hang out with his friends. Kyle stood 4 feet tall, weighing in at roughly 52 pounds, blessed with beautiful hazel eyes and dirty blonde hair. He was a joyful, outgoing kid who was well-mannered in all regards. It is terrifying what happened to him and his mother, even more so that he is still missing after well over 1,000 hours of manpower have been put into his search. On the morning of January 9th, 2023, the Doan family woke up ready to get back into the school routine after the winter break. And like I mentioned, they were all in the school routine. They all get up that morning, they're getting ready, and they're running just a little bit behind. Brian was going to take his daughter to school, while Lindsay was going to take Kyle with her so he could attend school while she taught class. Every single day before they would take off to school, Brian would give his son Kyle a huge hug, telling him to have a good day at school and that he loves him. This day, due to the rush that they were in, he didn't. Lindsay and Kyle would both hop into the family's SUV, being a Chevy Traverse, and they headed to the Lillian Larson Elementary School. On the way there, they were driving down San Marcos Road. All the while, their area was being hit with torrential downpour, which really came without any warning. Almost instantaneously, it's starting to flood different roads and areas around them. Coming up in front of her was a creek crossing, located at the San Marcos and Welsona Road intersection. With all of the heavy rain and the fact it was a creek crossing, Lindsay was laser focused on the road ahead of her. And then the creek crossing came into her view, and she didn't see any warning signs, and there had been no flood broadcasts like there normally is when the roads are considered dangerous to drive on. So she thoroughly surveys the road and the water that's crossing over the road in front of her, and from the looks of it, it doesn't seem much deeper than it normally is as she approached it. And then she decided they were going to cross over it. The second that the tires hit the water, Lindsay cursed loudly, which is something that never really happened. The outburst came as she realized she had just lost control of the vehicle, and in a matter of seconds, the family's SUV was carried off the road with the duo still inside, and slammed into a big sycamore tree, getting pinned up against it. Kyle, in the back, hears the panic in his mother's voice, and he does his best to comfort her during this insanely hectic time, and he says to her in a peaceful tone, "Mom, it's okay, just be calm." As they were trapped inside of the car, with the water levels rising very quickly, Lindsay was aware that she had to act now. With the power of the water and the water levels rising the way they were, Kyle stood no chance getting out of the car alone. Lindsay successfully got out of the front seat and was able to get a hold of a tree off to the side. Next, she told Kyle to jump into the front seat so she could grab his hand and pull him out of the SUV. Kyle did just that. He jumps into the front seat and then makes it out of the SUV holding onto his mother's hand. Except Kyle is violently being pulled towards downstream by the creek, away from his mother. Each millisecond must have felt like an hour, as she could feel herself losing grip of her son's fingers, before eventually she could no longer hold on, and the connection broke. Immediately, he was flying down the creek. When they initially lost connection, her and Kyle were locked in eye contact, and Kyle was looking directly at her as he floated backwards down the debris-filled river. Instantaneously, she lets go of the tree and attempts to get to Kyle to save her child. But as she's going down the creek, she's battling to stay above water, and it's getting harder and harder to see Kyle. Lindsay was once again pulled underneath the surface and then had to fight her way back to the top. And then she surveys the creek, but she can no longer locate her son. No matter where she looks, he's gone. While all of this is happening, a few people who lived nearby would hear the screams of terror coming from the creek, and immediately they just started running towards them. One of these people would make it to the creek, and almost right away, they say they see a human-like figure go flying by them, but they weren't sure exactly what it was. Moments later, they see Lindsay fighting for her life in the same water. They just started running down the side of the creek, trying to keep up with her, until eventually she luckily was able to get a hold of some branches or objects under the water, which brought her to a complete stop. Then 3 people who showed up were able to throw her a rope, and she got a hold of it and was barely pulled to safety. It wasn't until distraught Lindsay was pulled on shore that the guy helping realized what it was he saw. That was her 5-year-old son, Kyle, on track downstream. They knew very well that they had lost him, and they started making the necessary phone calls to get help on the way and to get the road blocked off so this didn't occur to anyone else. Shortly after the accident, the authorities were called, and law enforcement, along with a multitude of rescue mission members, showed up to the site just after 8 a.m. that morning to begin looking for Kyle. Knowing that they were in a very dangerous situation, they hurried, trying to find Kyle as fast as possible, combing through every single area that they could. However, only a few hours into their search for Kyle, they were forced to call it off, due to the weather conditions just becoming too severe to continue in. So they scaled back that day, until it was safe for them to put people on the ground again. Now let me spare you every single detail, and I'll keep it short and sweet. They have put a massive fucking effort into finding Kyle, from the day he went missing, January 9th, 2023, at approximately 8 a.m. that morning, up until present day when I'm making this video, January 25th, 2023. There have been no clues or signs as to where Kyle might have ended up. It is possible that he ended up downstream, merging into another river according to multiple reports. That seems to be like a very realistic option, as the San Marcos Creek does run directly into the Salinas River there, and that river has almost constantly been above flood levels during these storms that California has been experiencing. When it comes to actual evidence, the only thing that they have found was one of Kyle's gray and blue Nike shoes that he was wearing the day of. Like I said though, that's it. It is mind-shattering to think about and see the some 300 trained individuals going out each day, putting drones in the air, having dive teams search underwater for at this point well over thousands of hours. Yet nothing has been found. They are all over in the sky. They have hundreds of people on the ground, accompanied by a multitude of canine units going through the tall grass, mud, debris, whatever, you name it. They are out there doing what they can to bring Kyle home. The first day or two, the Doan family was holding on to hope that maybe, by a miracle, Kyle had made it out of the flood and could somehow be found alive. But as they watched the days turned into weeks, that hope began to dwindle quicker and quicker, as the likelihood of a 5-year-old being able to survive such vicious and relentless elements got lower and lower by the minute. The family is obviously going through a really rough time. It's just day after day of waiting for them, and hoping and praying that they can locate Kyle, at least, dead or alive, for the sake of closure. The day Kyle went missing, he was wearing a black puffer jacket with a red liner on it, some blue jeans, and his blue and gray Nike shoes. He stood 4 feet tall, weighed in at 52 pounds, again had beautiful hazel eyes, and some dirty blonde hair. He was a special person to a lot of people, always showing his huge heart and sweet demeanor to everyone who knew him. One thing that became clear really quick in Kyle was his resilience and his ability to adapt and overcome. When he found himself with this serious injury to his leg, he didn't let it bring him down. Instead, he stayed positive and kept the foresight of getting healthy and playing soccer again. So he stayed focused on that, working extra hard to make sure his recovery went well, which is really hard for a 5-year-old to do with a broken femur. He maintained his amazing attitude, loving spirit, and genuine heart through all of his ups and downs, staying extraordinarily calm all the way up until he was swept away, saying, "Don't worry, Mom, it's gonna be okay," which is incredibly brave of him. His father, Brian, does not blame or resent his wife in any way for the decisions that she made that day, saying that he knows she did everything she could to save his life. It's just the most unfortunate situation that you wouldn't wish upon anybody. Lindsy herself is struggling with the trauma of what happened every single day, wishing that it was her instead of her youngest son. As the community tries their best to support the family, they are still in pain about this. And it doesn't really get any better because they are left without closure, having no idea where their son is. After the weekend over the 23rd, they had just sent out another huge group of personnel to comb through any areas they left untouched by the river and creek. Again, sending almost 300 people out to look for Kyle, with heavy equipment, drones, dive teams, dogs. The probability of Kyle coming home alive now is next to none, if we're thinking realistically, and that's fucked up to think about. No one deserves to go through this, and I send their family my sincerest condolences regarding Kyle. Monday, the 23rd of January, as reported by the KSYB, the call was made to pause the search for Kyle, deciding that they would continue on a limited, ongoing basis. His siblings cannot believe that he's gone, and knowing that he's out there somewhere is painful and weighing heavy on their chest. They just continue to keep their fingers crossed, hoping that they see some closure. Kyle Doan went missing on the morning of January 9th. Over 2 weeks later, it's the 25th, and he has yet to be found. There has been no sign of him since he was pulled away from his mother and taken downstream. Alright guys, that's gonna do it for today's video. If you made it to the end, go down to the comment section and comment Little Angel so I know. And if you enjoyed today's episode and you want to join the team, you know what to do. If you want to, you can follow me on Instagram at Robert Clausen with 2 N's. If you have a story suggestion, DM me on there. I think that's all I have for you guys today. Again, I truly appreciate your support. Until the next video, peace.